and to DMLab London. We are looking at accessible music technology. My name is Megan. I'm the DMLab National Coordinator, and I'm a white, tall woman with long, dark, wavy hair. I am wearing a black skirt and black band t-shirt and a fun yellow beanie that says Antisocial Vegan Club on it. I am always a vegan, but tonight I'm not, antisocial particularly. And we have 3 speakers on tonight who I'll introduce in a second. We'll have 2 speakers with time for questions after each one. So please do think of questions, people in the room and also everyone on YouTube. Feel free to type questions as they come up into the comment section, and we'll read them out here for the speakers to answer for you. We'll then have a break after the second speaker where you guys can play with some of the instruments in the room, everyone online, have a chat and send us any questions that you have. And then there are snacks and drinks outside for anyone here who would like them. We have our amazing BSL interpreters, Lorna and Petra, with us. And we also have Max, who is doing live captioning. I want to just plug the next DMLab London, which will be happening here on the 9th of March. So anybody who would like to come, please come along or join on the YouTube live stream. The toilets are just outside this door towards the left. Please feel free to come and go as you wish. This is a relaxed environment. So if you need to step out, please step out and come back in whenever you would like. And at the end of the session, we will be putting up a lovely QR code to enter some feedback. I will remind you at the end because feedback is so important to us because it lets us do these events. So I will now introduce our first speaker, Philip Catterall. Philip's original career was in the communications and computer industries, followed by a second career in health and social services. Alongside this, he played flute in various folk bands over the years. These experiences led to a light bulb moment in 2012 when, inspired by the Paralympics, he developed the concept of a musical prosthesis. During his work in health and social services, he noticed that many SEND day centres had unused musical instruments laying idle. Fortunately, he had the background and professional contacts to turn this insight into action, which led to the creation of the Accessible Music Project to support inclusivity in music.
Hi, I'm Philip Catterall, as I've been introduced. I'm 6 foot. Years ago, I used to have lots of blonde curly hair, which my sister was jealous of, but she's not jealous of that anymore. I got a blue jacket and blue jeans on. Talking for the next 20 minutes or so about a musical prosthesis and open source technology. The idea came to me during the Paralympics back in 2012. Talking to a colleague, and I had one of what they call light bulb moments, and it just sprang into my head, what you need is a musical prosthesis. And to know why that idea came to my head, you need to go back a number of occasions. You see these sort of adventure films where it says there's some big thing happens. They go back, they say, well, you go back 6 months, go back 2 years. I can go back to probably about 10 years before this time. I changed my career from being in industry to work in mental health care. And I discovered a lot of musical instruments sitting around. I used to play flute, but there's quite a lot of guitars there. So a friend of mine, she had a daughter, and she was a music teacher, but her daughter had Down syndrome. So what she did was to simplify the music into 2 or 3 chords, so she could play quite a few tunes on this guitar. So she taught me about 12 chords in about 12 weeks. So then I ran these music sessions, and what she said basically was, if you can play an A chord, then you're a guitarist. Everything after that is refinement. Oops, that way. And the point she was making there, if you look at the keyboard or a guitar, you need a lot of manual dexterity to do that. Flute's a lot simpler because you press a few buttons down, and Mr. Bonebat, around about 1832, he was a clockmaker. He made the flute easy to play, which is why I played the flute. But my friend taught me to play the guitar. And I remember sort of doing the A chord, then the sort of D chord, And then when I got to G chord, it was really quite hard work. And same with the, just a minute, try to do that. Again with the keyboard, unless you're Lang Lang, it's quite a difficult instrument to play. So this is where the idea of the musical prosthesis came in, because go back, if I move forward from working in mental health to then 2010 it would be, I live near Milton Keynes. You can get around Milton Keynes very quickly. You've got the grid roads where you can do 60 miles an hour. But one day I didn't manage it across the road. I got hit by a Toyota Corolla. I was off work for 9 months. And it gave me a deep insight of what it's like. I couldn't even make toast for 2 months. But I made a good recovery. And 2 years later, I was up walking in the Alps over in Austria and coming back to the hotel and watching the Paralympics on the TV. And that's when I had this chat with my colleague. I said, what you need is a musical prosthesis. So basically, I want to play like an A chord with my elbow as for starter. But it's one thing to have a bright idea, but how do you actually achieve it? So you've got a confluence of ideas coming along. One, the friend who's actually explained how to make it easy to play guitar, give people confidence, keep it simple. Then you had the Paralympics, but at the same time as all that, you had coming into view, is that showbar on the screen? Oh, are you picking up on that? Yeah, that's called an Arduino. You get anything from £5 to £20, depending on where you're buying them from. A little microcontroller. Think about your washing machine or your TV. There's something which has got the personality of your TV or the washing machine. That's what you program into it. So initially, I just programmed one of these. Pop over a jump before, that's the Arduino. And you have an idea, well, how do I go about it? And luckily, because of my background, having worked in both industry, I'm an amateur musician as well. Talked to a few friends of mine. They said, well, use one of these. What you can do, put the rules of music inside the Arduino. And it's using what they call open source. So you basically, this comes with lots of free software you can try out. One of which is like a program to play MIDI. MIDI is are you familiar with MIDI? Where you put it onto a laptop or computer of some sort, write all your music on that, plug it into a keyboard, and then you can send music into your keyboard from your PC. Same with this, you can put the software on this, and will it work? So my first thing I did, basically I just got myself an Arduino and a 5-pin DIN socket, two 20-ohm resistors, and a connecting wire, plug it in the back of my daughter's keyboard, just circle around the notes and also some instruments. That proved to me I could get from the Arduino into a keyboard. Next thing I did is add some switches to that, so I can now play notes on my daughter's keyboard with the Arduino. So to go out to the real world, I put the Arduino and the 5-pin DIN connection, and I could select from there up to 4 chords and 2 percussion on that. So I had a friend of mine, she's an occupational therapist. She had one of her people she supported was interested. She had cerebral palsy, this individual, so she thought she'd have a go. So I went along there, I was coming across the car park, my guitar, a keyboard, the prosthesis, an amplifier, a box full of different kinds of switches and so on. And so I was sort of sweating profusely by the time I travelled about 200 yards, but got to this person's flat. I tried out a whole load of different switches and things, and she came up basically putting 2 foot switches under her left foot. I ended up being there for about an hour, so I was playing tunes on my guitar, and she was following and doing various bits of percussion and so on. She said, oh, I'm getting very tired. And my friend said, this is the occupational therapist, well, that shows it's working, because she's engaging with the music, and she's exercising herself at the same time. But there's a lot of gear to carry. Luckily, these things came out. They're called shields. And basically it fits on top of the Arduino. can come over and have a look at these afterwards. And the music shield has got a little MIDI synthesizer on there, and it's got 8 octaves, 700 instruments, 16 channel polyphonic. So basically you can program anything you like into that. But I've learned to keep it simple though, so I don't go adding too many things into it, because if you're back to building an ordinary keyboard, then you're failing in what you're trying to do. You're trying to help someone with limited abilities to be able to play and engage in music. And that was the... Right, so to make this work effectively, it's not so much what's in the electronics in the box, it's what you give people to interact with. So as I said, you've got sort of buttons this size, and as you can see on the screen, I've got, I'm using pressure pads, normally used for alarm systems under your carpet. As you come into the hallway, you press on one of those. I just adapted those with pressure sensors. I help out people called Electric Umbrella up in Hemel Hempstead, you might have heard of them. And I've had people there doing floor drums with their feet. I've got or you can have finger drums over here, or you can have a little tiny switch over there. So you just you can use your fingertip if you want to, or your foot, or your elbow, whatever you want, or a joystick. I call those actuators, but to me, they're the most important part, is how can you get the interface working with the person you want to work with. Because of my background in sort of industry, I like things to be able to work. There's a lady called Wendy McGee. She wrote the sort of book, Music Technology in Therapeutic and Health Settings. Back in 2016, she said one of the biggest inhibitors to getting people to use music technology to support people with special educational needs and development, it's too complicated. So what I've done, I've got rid of all the complications. So basically, I did my boxes, I bought one of them here. It basically, you switch it on and it works. So the learning curve to use these is almost nil, because everything's in the box. You've got the speakers, the amplifiers, the microcontroller, and the MIDI synthesizer all in one unit. And basically, you just plug it in. So like on here, you just plug it into the box, and it works. Just trying to think my way through. These ones up here, the hardest thing I have actually is coming up with names for these things. So this one I call a typewriter, because it's like an old-fashioned typewriter case. I call that one the cheese wedge. And I've got another one which I call the electric bed bin, because it's about the size of our bed bin at home. And again, you see on the back of these things, you've either got a 5-pin DIN socket, which you can plug into with a joystick, or you put a quarter-inch socket, so you just plug a big switch straight in the back of that. They come into, I have kind of 2 strands I worked out. So I've been doing this for about, 10 more years now. There's just going back, there's those which basically I call them base units, and those you plug in all the actuators into, all the switches, all the pressure pads, or whatever you want to use. These come into a kind of different category. I had somebody contact me who'd seen an article in the Spinal Injuries magazine, and he was basically as a motorcyclist who's drumming, and he'd broken his spinal cord, couldn't use his legs anymore, and wanted to be able to still play drums. And I came up with this device here. In my more adventurous sort of, when I was back in my 20s, I used to think like sports parachuting and stuff like that. I remember these people used to have cameras on their helmets, and they could take photographs or videos on the way down. And I'm always searching around to find some way of getting an interface from one source or another. I remember one of these cameras had a switch that went into your mouth, and you use your teeth, you clench your teeth, that triggers the camera. So this box here has got the MIDI synthesizer in it, the Arduino, but it's also got a quarter-inch socket there. You plug the 2 switch into, so you can now do a bass drum using your teeth. And I gave him some extras to play with, so the big yellow button does bass drum, but I had a hi-hat, tom, and a couple other instruments on there. This I did for McIntyre Special Needs up near Aylesbury. the brief on this one was that they had a young lad, he had certain sounds would calm them, so I went and took a sound recorder along, recorded the various sounds that he liked. And one of the specifications was it had to be light enough to be thrown across the room and not hurt anybody, but strong enough to be stamped on and not broken. So one of my favourite materials is chopping boards that you get from Tesco, like £1 a piece, and you can cut those up, and it's wipeable, it's indestructible, and it's lightweight. And very useful thing to have. Again, in McIntyre, they had a person quite a long way on the autistic spectrum. He couldn't vocalise very well, but he wanted to do over McDonald had a farm. So on the farm, there was a sports car or a lion or whatever. And again, I made this easy for the therapist to use because I gave him a little grid of where these went. It's touch sensitive, basically. And he could just change the sound files, change the pictures, and do a different sort of tune. And what I do with these things, I hand these things out, and when people have finished or moved on, then they come back. This one is slightly different. It's I used to do a lot of demonstrations. I used to be involved with the Computer Museum up at Bletchley Park for quite a while, so I used to test things out on the public. So when I had things like I got here sort of spread out for people to see, this open source software, it's what we share it on the internet. I write stuff, put it on my website. People can borrow my stuff. I go on somebody else's website, borrow their stuff, etc. So while I was there, I'd already got guitar sounds out of my various boxes. And I just looked up, I used the ultrasonic rangefinder, the kind of thing you find at the back of your car to start you hitting things. And I made myself literally an air guitar after about 30 minutes just by borrowing some code from somewhere else. So as you cut the beam in different places, you've got an A chord, a G chord, or whatever. It's got a mode switch on it so that you turn it, it then becomes an air drum or a flute. So it's very versatile. It is almost a demo piece, really, that. And there's no really end to what you can do. I've got a friend of mine who runs a kind of I'm trying to think of call it, during the summer holidays, she runs a kind of club for young kids and stuff. So the idea behind this was, this is what they call capacitive sensing. Same sort of thing you got on your iPhone when you touch the screen, it picks up your static from yourself and does things. So you could all write poetry on these leaves, and I've recorded all the sounds. When you touch the leaf, it then recited back to them. And this is on a similar kind of idea. You can make up a story, but again, for the person I handed this to, you can change the pictures, change the sound files, and actually this works on it's the same width as a roll of newspaper, so not newspaper, wallpaper. So you can just take the paper off, put a new piece of paper on, change the pictures, change the sounds, it's now doing something else. And a great thing for doing field testing, this was done while I was at the Computer Museum, and I try things out in the general public because if I'm going to work with people, I support Northampton Music Service as well. And a good way of testing things out is just take them out in the wild and see what people do with them. So you're welcome to look at these things when they're finished. But I call this my COVID-friendly guitar. Not guitar, COVID-friendly keyboard, because I just cranked up the sensitivity so you don't actually need to touch it, so you can play the notes by moving your hand about 2 or 3 centimeters above the keys. This one, I like to sort of challenge people's perceptions. I call this my table flute. Basically, I've got some sensors under the plywood. I painted pure white. People walk right past it. I say, go back, run your hands over it. And I've got a sort of pentatonic scale on that. You get some quite nice flute sounds coming off it. On over here, I put some sensors under the table. And so I made it into a table drum. People find it interesting. You go to a piece of a table, put some sensors underneath, and it becomes something different. This thing here is what I call my electric bed bin. And I got my pressure pads on the floor, and again, I can't remember I did it as a floor guitar. I think I used like the AC/DC sort of kind of tunes on it, the Stairway to Heaven or whatever. You could play some tunes on the floor with your feet. Again, with open source stuff, there's all kinds of sensors. You can use ultrasonic rangefinders, infrared, capacitive sensing somewhere, 9 degrees of freedom, all kinds of different sort of sensors. And it's just a question of finding one that does the job. And I run a rather challenging situation where the people out the Northampton Music Service, they've got a 20-year-old Xbox interface for playing golf with. So basically got two wires that come out, you put a golf club through it, you swing the golf club, and then the golf ball goes across the screen. They adapted that to make some sounds, but they can't get a replacement of that, so they wanted me to help them out. But I'll explain this thing a bit later, but this is called a draw wire displacement sensor. And basically pull the wire out. When you pull the wire out, there's some gears inside, there's a rotary potentiometer inside, and so you can detect, say, between 0 and 5 volts. So 1 volt could be a C chord, 2 volts could be a G chord, whatever you program it to be. But the advantage of sort of networking with people, I've been trying to solve this problem for about 18 months. We have a makerspace in Milton Keynes. I just happened to be sitting next to retired F1 Formula, we have Red Bull, the Formula 1 racing teams there in Milton Keynes, and he was retired in there. He said, what did he do with one of these, which I'll come back to. Yeah, so sort of getting near the end, I came up with I brought two examples of machines that have arisen out of a sort of a need. This one here, I call it Top Box. Again, I'm trying to think up names for these things all the time. I was at a conference at Royal Hospital for Neuro Rehab in Putney. Trying to think now, about 6 years back, pre-COVID anyway. And we were just chatting in general, and one lady there said she was a music therapist, and she had this young girl who was quadriplegic, and could I come up with something which she could use? And but she wasn't technical, so the idea behind this box was it would, got to hear why I'm pointing to the screen. But you can come and look at this afterwards. But basically, she gave me the 8 chords that she wanted, so I put 8 chords into it, 4 percussion on it. I can give you 4 instruments on it, and this thing's working. There's now. But you can just change what it does. It took me about a minute and a half in a pub to explain how this thing worked. So the idea behind that was Wendy McGee, back in the sort of 2016, has said they're too expensive, they're not portable, they take ages to set up, and so on. So what I'd try to do with open source is take the cost right down to next to nothing. This is very simple to operate. It's portable, runs on a 9-volt battery. That's it, really. And the other device I've got on here is slightly different. This is using the draw wire displacement sensor. And that's what's sitting inside the box. And this is wired up, hopefully. It's not a theremin. One of the things I've noticed when you're working with people when they need to use this type of technology, it's got to be repetitive, and you have to have the same results every time. If it varies every time, then they don't get any kind of reinforcement in what they're trying to do. So on this, every couple of centimeters, you get a particular note occurring. But I mentioned the drain pipe at the start. Again, I'm looking for simple answers. So that is actually a piece of drain pipe with some tennis racket grip gone around it. Again, at Makerspace in Milton Keynes, we've got people using sewing machines. And I was worried about the wire being a bit dangerous. It was a bit like a cheese cutter. So suddenly made me a nice slinky to go around it to make it safe. But this proved to be remarkably successful because this girl that was aiming for this got very limited motor skills and fairly low on verbal skills as well. But she was able to put her hand through it. And then she was watching what her own hand was doing whilst listening to the sound as she went along. And we could play around with different sounds that she would like. I'll call that tone wire. Nearly there. So thanks for sort of taking time out to come over and see my presentation. But there's a number of things I found is to sort of be aware of when you're working in this kind of environment. One thing I found, you've got to be very careful. I'd beware of hubris. Very easy to start adding bits onto something, so you end up back with a proper keyboard or something else like that. So I find it, I constantly have to remind myself to keep it simple. Yeah, which is what I said, I'll keep it simple. Anything else? And the one area I'm trying to develop this into is in therapeutic care, because all these devices have got USB ports on it. It's possible to extract from the USB ports. There's some software called processing. And so eventually, say you put some pressure pads on the floor, you could do something like gate training so you can hear the sound, use it against a metronome. Then you could sort of see what kind of improvement people make over time. One of the troubles that Wendy McGee pointed out was there's very little objective evidence. And what I like to see is a move towards objective evidence using assisted music technology, where you can sort of take outputs from whatever machine you're using and then record it, and then you can stick it in graphs. One of my jobs that I had before I retired was in clinical commissioning. And you look at saying, well, we're going to spend £500,000 on you. Can you prove that £1 million also is spent properly? So that's it, basically. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Phil. I just wanted to ask, does anybody have any questions? We take any in the room, but also anyone on YouTube? Yes? We'll just get a microphone to you so everyone can hear.
Hi, Phil. Thank you so much. That was amazing. And I'm really interested in, it's great to see how many different devices, instruments you've made. And I'm just interested in how you've done that fabricating, and is that something that you have a background in, or was it a lot of trial and error, or yeah?
It's sort of sorry, I'm being blinded by that light all the time. I'll just move to one side. No, I mean, I'm what they call Meccano generation. I go back to when I was at school, I was allowed to pour things like molten metal, use lathes and mechanical saws and so on. And my friends and I, we would take our motorbikes apart, we'd take our cars apart, which you can't do these days. So looking where I grew up, you could do lots of practical sort of things. Again, my job that I had was very practical. When I worked for British Telecom for 30 years. You get lots of good training and so on, but I did a joint degree in computing and psychology because when I was putting in big systems, you had to understand the people side as much as electronics and so on behind it. So, yeah, I just have a knack to be able to do things, I suppose. I've got a fairly big workshop at the bottom of the garden. I'm glad for programs like the repair shop, because my wife doesn't mind me having 21 saws now. I've got 21 different types of saws and don't know how many screwdrivers, but lots of them, etc. But she knows if you want to do these things, you do need lots of screwdrivers and saws and everything else. So I hope that kind of answers. But yeah, I've got a... Oh, well, no, the other thing I should say is, I mean, I used to come to MIDI labs up until COVID came along, and we used to have what we call rucksack moments where we bring stuff here and we get stuff out of our rucksacks and we sort of present to each other, and we'd also sort of pinch other people's brains. And again, Makerspace, we've got lots of people like that Formula 1 racing engineer. Things about networking, learning from other people. And again, I was at Computer Museum at Bletchley Park for about 25 years, so I know everything involved from valves right up to modern state-of-the-art electronics.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, because you sort of blinding me all the time.
Are there any other questions? Yeah, great, thank you.
Hi, yeah, thank you, Phil, for the presentation. Yeah, like recently with this kind of thing, I found myself, I have a background in engineering, electrical engineering as well, and I have more of a background in the software, and I'm trying to move into more kind of embedded projects like these, which we can kind of see really like the end to end of you're working with like an end user making things for people specifically, and you can really kind of see the effect, and that's really satisfying. But it's really hard because I don't have the access to all the tools and things. So if you're kind of someone that's trying to move more into making something physical and like you don't have the massive like workshop, like are there like 3 pieces of equipment that you think, oh, this is how you start a project like this, like the tone wire or the
what I mean, I'm just trying to think here because probably one recommendation I have is you can go and buy boxes from various suppliers. On my website, I list all my suppliers that I've got. And I like to make, I mean, this box here was bought off the shelf. So you need a drill to make the holes. A little bit of soldering, but again, I didn't bring one with me, but they have a thing called screw shields. So using the Arduino, they have a thing with little tiny, where you can put the wire in and just screw it down with a small screwdriver. So, and some of them also come with you can clip them together. So there's I don't think of the name. Where's it gone? Lost it. I tend to make places untidy very quickly, given half a chance. Oh, good in hand. Yeah, the phone called SparkFun. They and again called Adafruit. They both have a system where you just click stuff together. And I mean, when I started using these, I'd not done any programming for about 10 years because I sort of left that behind doing project management and managing sort of big scale systems and so on. And then even when I again working in health and social care, mental health, I wasn't doing anything technical at all. But I kept building websites to keep my hand in, in terms of what was going on with electronics and the internet and so on. But when you get this, it just comes with a program called Blink, and it flashes on and off. So you download the free software, put it into your computer, and you come with a Blink program. So I went, okay, I'll make the Blink longer and I'll make it shorter. So far, so good. I changed the timer on it. I then cut and pasted it several times. It now did SOS, dot, 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 dash, 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 dot, dot, dot. And then, as I said, I put the 5-pin DIN socket on 2 resistors. You get a thing called a breadboard where you can just use wires and just attach things together so there's no soldering involved. That again is on my website if you look there somewhere. But it doesn't take a lot of technical skill. It's like saying you have an idea, how do you prove it works? So to experiment with the hardware, you don't need much at all really. You can just wires you can push into the board like the resistors and so on. So it doesn't take a lot of. Just maybe a screwdriver is all you need at the end of the day. The reason why I end up with these is because basically, I suppose my background is I like things to work. Even been travelling on the M62 back in the 1980s, I was responsible for them all the emergency telephones on the system. Again, where I used to work, Granada TV, BBC used to pass all their circuits through where I worked. You cannot fail. So in our heads to make things reliable. And again, if you take your own, I used to do parachuting as well, so we used to pack our own parachutes, and you pack your own parachute, but you wouldn't pack your own spare. Our friend would pack the spare, so you put in some redundancy, something would open you on your way down. But the big mistake I have made is using boxes that are too small. Like when I made what I call the air drum flute guitar, in a little black box, I thought, why didn't I use a bigger box? It's so much hard work to get everything sitting in one box with the amplifier and the battery case and the switches and everything else. So now I tend to use bigger boxes. Hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Can we have another round of applause for Philip Catterall, please? Thank you so much, Phil. Okay, so it'll be time to... yeah. So I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Yeah? Yeah? Well, I'll do the introduction now and then we can, seeing as I've started talking. Our next speaker is Gawain Hewitt. Gawain is an artist and composer who works at the intersection of music, technology, and well-being. His practice centres on creating accessible, interactive sonic experiences that invite connection and participation. We're very excited to have Gawain here with us to introduce. Well, I don't want to steal his thunder too much, to be honest, because he's going to talk about this incredible instrument and tech that he's working on. But yeah, we'll let Phil pack away all this stuff and Gawain set up his stuff, and yeah, whenever you're ready.
Me and Zen were talking about, I think the first ones we did were 15 years ago, sort of just around the corner. So it's been a while, and I've always been quite obsessed with motion tracking instruments. Specifically, you probably know, you may not. Historically, sort of one of the most successful commercial musical instruments for accessible music making has been a product called the Soundbeam, and it uses an ultrasonic beam to turn movement into MIDI. Philip spoke very well about all that earlier on, and his little instrument does the same. And I've been obsessed with making versions of that concept since I knew you could. Really, since I knew that it was possible. And again, as Philip said, you know, the things like Arduino boards and stuff coming out and allowing us mere mortals to have a go. So I'm here today to talk about the Mugo, which is, I think it stands for Musical Instrument Gesture Operated, which is essentially that. It takes a sensor that measures distance. Again, Philip used exactly the same analogy I'd use, which is think about the reverse sensor on your car and track that to sound making. So honestly, I'm a little bit, I could go in two directions at this point. My head's been in this a lot, but then I've got some stuff around the project itself. So maybe which way should we go? Let's dive into the presentation quickly, and then we'll get into the electronics afterwards. So what's been cool about this project is it's a collaboration between quite a few of us. So I'm working on the electronics, the code, and the design, so this stuff, but working in partnership with a charity called Sounds of Intent. So they are an education charity, specifically working in accessible music making. If you're not familiar with them, I'd really recommend checking them out. They've got this incredible framework for measuring attainment in pre-musical sound making, in early musical sound making, and all the way through up to, you know, from the very first sounds that we take for granted and don't really call musical education, all the way up to grade 8 equivalent. And they're all mapped and accredited. I mean, it's brilliant. It's a genius idea. It's very, very well researched, backed up with an awful lot of brilliant stuff. Certainly when I got to know about it, it really affected how I thought about the work I do, making music accessible. We're also working with the Amber Trust, who are a charity that work with, specifically with blind children, with technology and music education, and the University of Roehampton. So it's a great team. And it's quite unusual, actually, in projects like this to have a team. It's really quite cool to have lots of people to think about this together. So the Mugo itself, I mean, it says here it's a small black box with an invisible beam that detects movement. Let's leave it at that. I'm going to show it to you in a minute, and I'll describe it to you. Talking about describing, my name's Gawain. I haven't described what I look like yet, so that would be helpful, wouldn't it? I'm 6'4". I've got a beard, got, sadly, not that much hair. Glasses, and I'm wearing a blue shirt and blue jeans. So the development of the project, sort of officially on the academic side, came from an academic paper that was written by the University of Roehampton studying Batten disease and children's music making. So what they found is that children with Batten disease, they had a much higher quality of life if they were able to make music, and beam instruments made it much more accessible to make music. So again, I think Philip spoke very well on a lot of the barriers to the existing instruments out there, in that they are expensive and often quite tricky to use. I'm going to be referencing Philip a lot. I just feel we're on the same page, which isn't a surprise. I've known Philip for a long time. So what we're trying to do here is to bring the price right down and bring the usability up. And I think he described it very well. You know, something you can just switch on, understand, and get going with. That's really the concept with it. There's a picture of it, which is of some use, but I've got the actual thing here. So what it looks like is it's a black plastic box with, this is the Mark 1. I could put it under here, couldn't I? It's a black plastic box with 2 gold knobs. Why they're gold? Great question. Thank you for asking that question. No reason. They're just the ones I could find in a hurry. Those ones measure how sort of the minimum and maximum distance of the beam that comes out. So the beam is tracking out of here. And then you've got these 3 knobs here. These are all 12-way switches. And that came out of some work we did testing it with young people and children, and specifically with blind users. And this allows it to be blind accessible. So you know, for example, if you're at 12 o'clock, you'd know what key you're in. And you could remember that. So you don't need to use any user interface. There's a screen and some buttons. In terms of the reason it looks like this, its form absolutely follows function. I sadly have not got to the point yet where I have the luxury to make it look nice. I'm just sort of, I feel like I'm sprinting just to make it function at the moment. So we're still in a kind of black box, literally a black box phase. But this particular one uses a time of flight sensor, which is like a very weak laser beam. But I've actually gone back to an ultrasonic sensor on the next one, because these are quite sensitive to ultraviolet light. And so if you use them in a bright environment, they don't work so well, which is a shame, because they otherwise work very, very nicely. Yeah, I think I've covered all that. So key features and advantages. I think one thing that's really interesting is with this actually is that, and this is, I can't tell you, again, I don't know if you can get this up on the screen. This is the Mark II that I've been working on. I feel like I've been working on this forever, like literally forever. I've been saying I'm nearly there for months and months and months and months and months. It's really been redefining my sense of what nearly there is. But this here, and I have to be really careful because literally I've just about got it working about 5 minutes before we left the house to come here. Also a moment for these ridiculous knobs on stems. They're just, I don't know if I get it on the side so you can see them. I'm really regretting buying those. I don't know why I bought them. They're about 4 inches long and they need to be about 1 inch long. So I'm going to have some fun with a hacksaw later. But this user interface here, which doesn't have any words. I couldn't think of any words on it. What's the right word? I don't know. It doesn't tell you what it does yet. But so you've got volume, minimum, maximum beam. These again are octave, key, scale. I actually can't remember them all. Which backing track, which sound. And there's one other which I can't remember. Then you've got play, loop, rewind, and then these bottom ones here, these all relate to the Sounds of Intent framework. So they all will have different backing tracks from this incredible education resource that are all, as I said, there's these backing tracks that will be in here, along with built-in sounds, but you can actually do qualifications all the way up to grade 8 standard accredited by Trinity College on this. And that's, to be honest, I think that's, I'm working really hard on the tech, and it's just like my kind of labour of love at the moment. But actually, I think the really interesting thing here is the work that the rest of the team are doing in making sure that it has a really solid educational framework, some new work composed for it that makes sense and is interesting. People accrediting it. So that's fascinating. So it makes it very, very usable for non-musical specialists, because you out of the box you can get on with making music with it. So the things we're interested in is cost. It's a really hard thing to price a new instrument. We've gone wildly all over the place with what it's going to cost when it comes out. We're hoping it might be under £100 one day. I don't know if that's true. At the moment, it's probably £300 to £400 is quite realistic for the iterations we'll be selling. Hand making things in England is really expensive. It's the bottom line. Although this is also open source, so the intellectual property side of stuff is kept very low. The fact remains, when you buy a lot of switches and PCBs and stuff and put it together, it's a bit like doing a bathroom, isn't it? I mean, it's the same stuff. You're like, oh, well, the tiles are quid. Oh, but I need a sort of 1,000 of them, or whatever. It's the same difference really with this. One of the things that's really kind of frustrating and kind of interesting is these little connectors, which I'm obsessed with. I love them. These are Molex connectors, and I don't know if you can't really see that. It's a tiny little white plug. And they're great because they allow me to do what I've just done, unplug this safely, plug it back. It's brilliant, very repairable, but they're really expensive. I mean, they're pounds each, which kind of is cool if you're doing one, but when you're thinking about doing 1,000, it really adds up very, very quickly. So certainly learning a lot with that. Some amazing pictures of our team there. Behold, all the people. So we've got Sophie from the Amber Trust, Sarah from Roehampton, terrible picture of Richard, Richard from Time, Kate from Time, that's me, and Adam Ockleford from University of Roehampton down there as well. So there you go. I think that's gone really well. That's gone really quickly. I'm pleased with that bit. That will lead you to hopefully to a web page where you can find out more. We are really interested in talking to people about it, and which leaves me 10 minutes to get into the really juicy bits about the instrument itself. So let's maybe have a look at what's going on. Let's see the Mark I working, and then maybe pray that the Mark II might work, if we're lucky. So the Mark I, I'm going to switch it on. Which way should we play it? Maybe that way. And this one has no built-in sounds. There we go. So I'm going to use I'm just using an iPad here, and actually I'm using Thumb Jam, which you might know. If you don't know Thumb Jam, it is like the best instrument on the iPad for many, many reasons. One of which is that it still works on iOS 12, which means you can buy an iPad for about £12 on an eBay and have a working musical instrument, which is brilliant, frankly. And I never stop praising the developer of this for doing this. I think it's really important to keep these things affordable. I don't know how long iOS 12 will be around, but the fact, I mean, even CEX, you can go in and buy an iPad for 15 quid and Thumb Jam will work on it. I just think that's genius, absolutely genius. But in here, I'm just going to go to MIDI. Again, Philip talked about MIDI. This is just a way for things to talk to each other. So it means that this machine can send some musical information and say, play this note, and the iPad will receive that information and go, OK, I'll play that note. And that's how we're going to get the sound on this one. So I'm just going to set the MIDI on. He says, can I do this? Yes, I can. Excellent. That's going to connect. Right. So hopefully, yeah, great. Phew, it worked. That's always a good thing on a demo when it works. So it's very simple, really. So you move your hand, and again, Philip described exactly this in his presentation earlier on. So, and as you move it, you go through different parts of the beam. You're breaking it. What's cool about this, which I really like about this, is that all the controls are on the top. And that was important to me. And we're about to do a load of user testing and see whether it's important to everyone else. It'll bring the price right down if it's not important. So maybe it's great if it's not important. It'll make it easier to make as well. So if I want the beam to be bigger, I just turn this knob here, and the distance between which so basically I'm measuring from a minimum, maybe if I do it this way, from a minimum to a maximum, and then I'm dividing that up into spaces, and then each space becomes a note as you go through it. And yeah, you just turn the knob. And so of course, if you make the space bigger, then the gaps become bigger, and so it becomes less sensitive. But luckily, we can increase the sensitivity as well. So at the moment, we've got 12 notes in a space that's somewhere between 400 centimeters and 2 meters away. No, that doesn't make sense, does it? 40 centimeters and 2 meters away. But if I turn this up, we can then have 24 spaces in that. And so it becomes more sensitive. We can also change the type of scale. So we could have a major scale. We could have a, what should we have? A whole tone scale. And we could change what key we're in the key of F at the moment. Some of you will know that already. I envy you very much. I don't know that already. So we could go to D sharp. And I mean, that's it. And I guess that's the point. And again, I'm going to spend the entirety of my talk referencing Philip, aren't I? But that was Philip's point as well, is that things should just work, right? And I really believe that. I mean, I am, you know, I'm this guy. I make this. I'm a proper geek. You know, I really am a real geek. And actually, DMLab, when I started DMLab, I couldn't do this. You know, I didn't know how to do this. I didn't know how to do any of it. I was not someone who could code or make. And actually, this community has supported me to learn how to do that. And now I'm that guy. But despite that, what makes me happy is I want machines that just work. I don't particularly enjoy spending time making music with stuff that requires me to have my brain switched on. I want to feel it. And for me, that's, I mean, we're all different, right? Different things suit different people. But for me, that's really, really important, is that I can then switch on my artistic self and get involved with being creative. So that's the Mark I working lovely. We're now going to kill the channel for the, thank you, for the iPad. Now this has been on the verge of being complete for months. That's obviously not true, but it's felt like it. And just before, so this has a built-in speaker, which does work, but it comes out at about the sound of a mouse's whisper. So I don't know why that is at the moment. So it's basically useless at the moment, unless we're very quiet. So I'm going to plug this in. Just before I left the house, I realized that I had 3D printed 12 boxes without a hole for this. So I then had to drill a hole. Which I managed to do. I was just, this is the sort of thing that takes the time. You're like, yeah, I smashed it, I've done it. I'm going to print 12. And then afterwards you're like, but there's no hole for the sound to come out. You know, it's just incredible. The mistakes I make. Oh, I'm hoping other people make mistakes too. The mistakes I make. Philip's nodding, this is good. And as you can see, it's got no bottom at the moment. So we've got it upside down. So we're going to switch it on, EA. And then hopefully, hey! Not sure if it's pointing in that direction. Okay. Yeah, great. I mean, I'm very happy about that. This is a good day. All right, that'll do. So what's different? Well, I guess from a user point of view, maybe from your point of view in the audience, very little, right? A key difference is that I'm still making this thing, so none of the knobs do anything yet. So if we plugged it into a computer, it would tell you that the knob's being turned, but I haven't actually written that bit of code yet that says do this. So we can't change any of the settings, unfortunately. But one of the things that was very hard for the geeks in the room is all those sounds, the sound that's on there now, I had to write my own sample player in C++ for the ESP32. So for those who don't know what an ESP32 is, it's a cousin of the Arduino, a sort of more powerful cousin that allows you to put more code on it. And the reason I felt it was important to do that, so it reads an SD card and can play them directly, is actually because we're thinking of mass producing it, it was to keep the costs down. So when I'm making one thing, I would use an external shield that would do that for me, but they might be £50 each. So it was a lot of work to do, but it means that the whole thing will sit on a microcontroller that's £6, which is important. So this one, which I'm delighted is working, this is a great day, will have 12 built-in sounds, 12 built-in backing tracks, and also we'll still do the Bluetooth stuff. You know, for those who want to link it up to Ableton Live or your iPad or anything, you can still do all that stuff. I think that's probably it. That's about 20 minutes, isn't it? And I guess, should we ask the floor any questions or comments or criticisms? I'm up for being challenged.
Anyone in the room or anyone on YouTube have any questions, comments, or apparently criticisms for Gawain?
Or constructive stuff.
Constructive
yes.
criticism.
Very basic. Super basic question. Oh, thank you. I have a slightly louder, super basic question. When you were deciding when you visualizing the whole thing, why are we doing this instead of doing that?
Oh, only because of the way up it is. So that you could put it that way.
So you can't just flip it. Oh,
and
okay.
actually, that does bring in an important point. There's a tripod mount on the bottom.
Oh,
So you
nice.
can just put it on a camera tripod. And the reason I'm using a camera tripod mount is there's so many things available on the market for cameras that allow you to put things at any angle. So that's why. But yes, it can go in any direction.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think we had one more, yeah?
Hello.
Hi, Zen.
How come you're using ultrasound and not radar?
We can talk about that later. I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe you can tell me why I should be using radar. You can tell me now if you want.
Lower power,
Okay.
slightly stronger field, so you can go through clothes, for example.
Wow.
It's a little bit more expensive, a little bit more reliable.
I'm all ears.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Do we have anyone on YouTube with any comments or questions? Okay. Thank you so much, Gawain. Can we have another round of applause
Pleasure.
for Gawain Hewitt, please?
Thank you.
Okay, well, we are going to take a 15-minute break. They're 10-minute break, I'm being told, because of the technical issues. Very sorry about that. But there are snacks and drinks outside. There are instruments to be played. Please join us back at 8:20. Everyone on YouTube, please step away from your screens, make a cup of tea, and join us back at 8:20. Thank you very much.